Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sharon Chaden Burks, and you are in the Idea Networking Sessions, and we're in April 2026. I have two new guest speakers for you tonight, and also some resources to share when we get to that portion of the evening. Today we have a return guest speaker who's been with us before, Holly Owens, and we have a new guest speaker, Megan Dixon. Holly, I'm gonna put you up first. Are you ready
Okay.
to go?
Yes,
All
let's
right,
go.
let's go.
Hi, everyone. Um, I'm going to tell a little bit about my background and then I will get into some of the tips and tricks about the job market or things that I've learned over the past 20 years from being an L&D professional. So my name is Holly Owens. I currently have several roles. I'm an instructional designer at Cape Fear Community College here in Wilmington, North Carolina. I also consult as a contract instructional designer with EdCarta, which is like a company that works with schools to get courses online, do different things. Um, what else do I do? I have a podcast. If you haven't listened to it, Ed Up L&D. I also am an adjunct professor at Touro University, where I teach in the Graduate School of Technology and the Graduate School of Education. So I do a lot of different things in my free time. So when people ask me if I have hobbies, my hobbies are working. Um, definitely want to make sure, like what Sharon is saying, to connect on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with all of you. If you haven't followed me or we haven't connected, please, happy to make a connection and make that networking work for us. Um, so my career spans from 2007 until about now, so that's why I say about 20 years. I started out my career as a high school teacher, and I thought that I was going to do that forever. So, do we have some teachers in the room? If you want to type in the chat, yes, raise your hand. Like, I was going to be a teacher forever. I knew since I was in eighth grade, I was like, I'm just going to be a teacher because I was labeled as a slow learner when I was younger. Um, and I was just going to change the lives of students forever. So I went to college. I got my degrees, went into teaching social studies, high school, government, and then I realized how regulated K to 12 education is and how many different things they continue to pile on teachers as far as administrative tasks and all those different things. And I was like, I don't think I can do this forever. So then I decided that it was probably best for me to transition out. So I did it before all the cool kids were doing it in 2011. And I jumped into e-learning and development with the government as a contractor. I had no idea what I was doing. There were no resources like there are nowadays for learning and development transitions. I just had to learn on my own. And basically, what happened during that time that I was a contractor is I had a supervisor who told me that talent recognizes talent, and I didn't know what he meant at the time, but now I do. He's basically saying, like, you need to do something else besides this e-learning development. And there was a role at Northern Virginia Community College as an instructional designer. Um, so he told me to apply, and I applied, got an interview, and then 15 minutes after I left the interview, I got the job. So basically, I went from K to 12 almost directly into higher education and then stayed there for a while. Transitioned out into different roles. Eventually, that role instruction it was called an instructional technology specialist or instructional specialist. Eventually, that led and evolved into instructional designer. Um, this is a lot. I'm just when I talk about this, I'm like, I can't believe it's been 20 years. And then eventually, personal life led me to New York, and I got a role as an instructional designer at Toro, where I still teach. And after a couple years as an instructional designer, they promoted me to the assistant director of online education. Did that for a year or two. Um, I learned a lot about management, and then I decided it was probably best for me. I went out into the world. So I worked at an OPM for a couple years, which is an online program management company. And then after that, I made a huge transition, not huge, but a different one. I went to corporate. So I worked at Amazon Pharmacy. So I have the views of both K to 12, higher ed, and corporate. And I've also done some work with the government contracting as well as an instructional designer for the Navy. So all that being said, is I learned a lot of different things along the way. And most recently, I did a webinar. I don't know if anybody got a chance to attend that. Um, and I talked about how to get a job without applying to it. So basically, when I think of this situation, I think of when houses are pre-market and they're already sold before they hit the market, is finding a role that is already available. It hasn't hit the market yet, and you're not competing with a bunch of applicants. Because I think that is something that I try to do now instead of having to go through the whole interview process. There's a lot of different things today that really are huge barriers for us when it comes to the process of applying to jobs. I feel like there's ATS systems, there's AI now, there's, different people. You're competing with people like myself who've been in the industry for 20 years if you're just starting out. And I do want to say, as a little caveat, that if you are transitioning out of education or any other role and you have 5, 10 years experience, those count. Do not discredit yourself. Some people that I've worked with as coaching clients are like, well, I have to start over again. No, you don't. You don't have to start at the bottom. You can find a mid-level position, which I highly recommend doing. So those years count for you. And I have a lot of different resources about how teachers make good instructional designers and how teaching translates into instructional design. Um, my experience, I think some of the lessons that I've learned over the years are that don't take the first salary that they give you, negotiate, because if you are transitioning out of teaching or you are transitioning out of a different role, more than likely it is going to be a pay cut, unfortunately. But I would say don't settle. I think I would not apply to positions that do not have salaries listed because I had a friend who I talked to recently. She went through the whole interview process and they didn't tell her the salary until the end, and then it wasn't enough. So completely wasted time, their time, her energy, projects, doing different things to throughout the different rounds. So make sure that when you're looking for roles that a salary is listed, even if it's a range. Go for the high because one of the things people are scared to say is like, I want something higher. Um, I want something 5,000, 10,000 more. They may say it's only 85,000, but they have a range in mind. So there might be some wiggle room there. And when you really think about it, if you think about the math, it's not that big of a difference in getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, 5 or 10 grand, right? It's like maybe like 50 or 100, $200. So over time, it's gonna cost them more to go out and hire somebody else than it is to actually just give you what you're asking for, right? So that's a big lesson I learned because so many times I took lower pay because I just wanted to get my foot in the door. And that was bad for me. And it would probably be bad for you too because you're not going to like that role and you're going to leave like I left some of these roles. Um, the other thing too that I preach out on LinkedIn world is quality over quantity. You can buy 5,000 lottery tickets and you still have the same chances of winning. You can apply for 2,000 jobs and not get one single response. So what you need to do and what you need to think about as you're transitioning into L&D or you're thinking about instructional design jobs, where do you want to be? There's a lot of different areas. There's corporate, higher education, education in general, there's nonprofit, there's government. So when people come to me and they're like, I want to be an instructional designer, the first question I ask them is, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in instructional design? So you have to figure out where you want to be, or else you don't know where you're going. And I've dabbled in all the areas because I just wanted to know them. So when I'm coaching people or when I'm talking about these areas, I can say I have experience there. What else have I experienced? I've experienced most recently, probably within the past 2 years, um, I had applied for a position at a well-known company. They took me through 6 rounds of interviews, 6 rounds. I had to do a project, and they had me on the hook, the proverbial hook, as the second choice. And I didn't find this out until they didn't tell me that I didn't get the role. Like I waited, I went through the whole process, did everything I was supposed to, did great interviews, interviewed with each person from every department, not just, it wasn't a group interview. That's why it was 6 rounds. Come to find out, and I'm sure this may have happened to some of you, they had an internal candidate in mind. And if that internal candidate didn't accept it, they were going to offer it to me. But they didn't make that clear from it. They made me do all the steps, and I was very upset. I think those are bad business practices. And that says a lot about the culture of the company and what they try to do with people. Because I, knowing what I know, was asking lots of questions. Well, when are you going to make a decision? Are you going to know soon? And this spanned from about a month and a half from the time I got the initial interview until I did the last 6 round and then waiting for them to respond to say that I didn't get the role. It was very devastating because I knew I could do that role. And obviously, if I was a second person choice, um, I was doing something right. So I took that away from that. So I think that also you need to make sure you provide clarity, get clarity around how the process works. And I even ask them, like, are you doing multiple rounds? How many people are you interviewing? Or can you give me an average? Like, what's the response time? Is it going to be like 2 weeks? Is it going to be like 3 weeks? So in my brain that's full of anxiety, I know how long I have to wait to receive a response, is really important. Uh, I think that one thing that I wish I did more of, and I wish I had more access to this, is people support systems because going through a job transition or transitioning into instructional design or just trying to find a job or a place where you fit is very taxing mentally. Um, like I said, don't make it your full-time job, quality over quantity. So finding people that are going through similar experiences or coming to these sessions, people who have been through similar experiences, and just sharing because believe it or not, we've all been there. We've all had experiences where we're like, I can't believe companies are doing this. I can't believe companies are paying people entry level still 40 to $50,000 as a salary. Give me a break. It's like 70 or 80 is entry level now with all the inflation and stuff we have going on. Don't get me started on that. Um, but yeah, I think throughout the years, it's just been making sure I'm an advocate for myself. I can't say enough about being confident in your skills. I don't care if you're starting out in instructional design or you've been an instructional designer for 25 years. Knowing yourself and feeling confident is important, especially in the interview process. Because all too often, and I talk about this a lot in my podcast, and I'm gonna wrap it up here soon, Sharon, getting there. People think that the company holds all the power when really we hold the power because we're the person that has the skills that the company is looking for. We're the person that has the experience that the company is potentially looking for. Yes, they can offer us a job. Yes, they can offer us some security financially, things like that, but you don't realize how much power you actually have in this situation. And I encourage people to ask as many questions as you possibly can. And when somebody says at the end of the interview, email me questions if you forget something, do it. Email them any questions that you have because you want to know what you're getting into. The whole interview process says a lot about the company's culture. So if you feel like in your gut that that's not a good fit, it's probably not a good fit. You probably need to move on elsewhere. Um, I think that's pretty much like what I've learned over the years. And I'm going to say there's a lot of great people out there who can coach and support you and share resources. There's tons of great stuff that you can access. And I just think it's important that you have your support system, you're confident about yourself, you're not making it a full-time job to apply for roles, and you get the salary that you want because we have families, we have things to take care of. We can't just take a lower salary because, some of us just can't. We can't do it. It's not feasible for us. So that's what I would say I've learned over the 20 years in instructional design and transitioning into different roles.
Excellent. I have one thing to add, but I'm going to add it after Megan has a chance to chat. So Megan, I'm going to spotlight you.
Oh, this is exciting. Exciting. Can you guys hear me? Sometimes my AirPods play nicely. Sometimes we fight. I just never know. Today we're getting along, so that's great. Uh, Perfect. So, I kind of have a similar story. I was in the classroom for 10 years. I knew, oh man, probably from fifth grade that I wanted to be a teacher. And it wasn't because I had a bad experience in school. I was the bad experience in school. Um, like my parents were shocked when I came home and I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. And it was because my sister had this terrible experience. My sister's dyslexic. She's a nurse practitioner now, so she has clearly like blown the doors off of all caps. She's great. I love her so much. But she had a teacher who like delighted in making her read in front of the class in like third grade. And I was like, if this horrible woman can be a teacher, obviously I can do it and I will do it better. As a fifth grader, I was like, that's my plan. Um, so went through school like very one track mind. I was like, I'm gonna do it. I fell in love with low incidence, like students with low incidence disabilities. Um, Went into special ed, worked with special populations, and like loved what I was doing. I hit like the 5 year mark, something around fives. It's a theme in my life. You'll see it. I started to like get this itch. I am a consummate lifelong learner. And so I was like, I feel like there's got to be more. So I went back to school and I got my master's, and I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to stay close to school. I was pretty sure that there was still something for me here. Like I hadn't lost any passion for that. So I went into and I got it in curriculum and instruction. Um, Blew through that, transitioned to a district level role. I was like, oh, this is great. So now I'm supporting and teaching teachers and not like in the classroom with students. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is better. And then, 2020 happened, right? The COVID. And all of a sudden, we had our youngest. That was a fun surprise. Um, right. I'm telling you, COVID got us all, guys. Um, and I was commuting an hour plus one way. And it was fine until it wasn't fine. And it wasn't fine when our back tire blew out on the highway. And we flipped, and I turned around and saw my 18-month-old like dangling in a car seat. And I was like, I can't, I'm out. I can't do this. Like the emotional toll, because you guys know, former teachers, people who are trying to transition into this, like teaching takes such an emotional tax on you because it's not a job that you put away when you're done, right? Like we think about these kids, our students, our teachers that we're working with, whatever the case may be, we take it home. It just sits with us. It's not something that you're like, oh, let me put it on my shelf and I'm going to leave it. Um, and I was like, I have to be done. And so I was like, okay, great. But what am I going to do? And I did. I was like, I have 10 years of experience, and I feel like as I'm looking at the job market, I have none. And the first like shift in my own mentality was taking all of the skills that I have and being able to put them into corporate lingo. So being able to say, okay, I know how to plan unit lessons, right? Like I can plan this whole thing for 6 weeks. Okay, well, in corporate America, that looks like I can plan end-to-end projects. Great. I can design that, I can plan it, I can implement it, I can see it through to the end. Um, it was, I understand time management, I understand different learning styles, all of these pieces, and then looking at job postings and saying, okay, what kind of actionable verbs, all my SMART goal people, right? Like we love an actionable verb, a measurable verb. Can I put on my resume that is going to work with the algorithm? Because everyone is using an algorithm to comb through resumes. They go through the system first, and then a person will see it if you have a high enough percentage. um I have learned this. I have friends in HR, they're like, This is just the way that things work now because the digital age is here. Um, so making sure, like, as I was going through, that I was updating my resumes for those jobs that I really wanted. Because you'll look at some and you'll be like, that's the one I want. Um, and really trying to make sure that my resume highlighted the skills that I knew that I had that aligned with those job goals. Um, it my big thing was like, I was like, if I can get in front of somebody, if I can get in front of a human, I know I can convince you that I am the one that you need. Like I know it. And so then like that landed me my first position at Mauser. And I felt really lucky. It was a smaller company, it's an electronic distribution company. They really touted family values. That was something that was important to me. And I felt like I was like going to just really hit my stride. And 6 months in, I was floundering, not a little bit. Like, I mean, I was just like, imposter syndrome was huge. I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I have to go back to the classroom. I clearly have tricked all of these people. I'm so, so sorry. Well, let me just turn tail and run. And one of my favorite managers, he actually just retired. I went to his retirement party. He was like, hey, I'm pull you in a conference room. I might make you cry, which makes me uncomfortable. And I know makes you uncomfortable, but like, we're going to have this conversation. And he was like, why do you love to do this? And I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. And he was like, okay, Mauser's goal is to make money selling electronic parts. And your job is to support the people on the tech side who are helping Mauser sell electronic parts. Why do you love that? And I didn't have an answer. And like it really like kind of broke me for a couple, like more time than I really am comfortable saying, but really it was like a couple of days. I was like, I don't, I don't know. I just do. And he was like, well, that's your problem. Like you knew why you love teaching. You need to figure out why, like how that why translates to what you're doing now. So that would be like honestly the thing that I recommend the most is before you start jumping into interviews, before you start like really pushing all of these things, what is it about work, whatever the work is, whether it's designing like instructional design, whether it's like right now I'm in the role as a system admin, why do you love what you do? And for me, the thing that makes me the happiest, regardless of a classroom, private or public sector, it's creating authentic user learning experiences to meet people where they're at. That's always been it. Like when I was teaching kids, I wanted it to be a fun, engaging lesson. When I was working with our IT team, I wanted it to be, I mean, well, I wanted them to take the training. Really, that was really the goal. Like the numbers, I was like, please just do it. It is a condition of employment. You must do this. And now transitioning to children's, it's the same thing. I want all of these doctors and nurses and clinicians to have the best and most seamless experience going through professional learning that they can. And that why is what keeps me going. So that's my big thing. Like, yes, absolutely understand your salary range. You should 100% before you go into those interviews have done your own research and like understand the market value for where you're looking because the market value for Dallas, Texas is very different from like Tampa, Florida or Cincinnati, Ohio. You need to know that range before you're going in. And you need to also be like, okay, if this is the range and this is my experience, this is as low as I'm willing to go. I always ask for about 10% more than what I'm willing to settle for. Um, but then I also, for me, it's not always about salary. For me, because I have 3 kids, it was time off. So if you couldn't meet me where we were at with salary, which is what happened with Mauser, they did meet me with PTO. And transitioning out of the classroom, let me tell you guys, that was a culture shock. Not having spring break or Christmas break, or I never had summer. Like that wasn't, I worked summer school, but like realizing that there was no Thanksgiving break. Like, please, I feed 45 people in my family. What do you mean I don't have any time off? And they were willing to give me that time. Like they were like, well, we can't meet you with salary, but we'll give you 2 extra weeks of paid time off. And I was like, yes, okay, great. Let's roll with that. And that just became part of my contract. Like I didn't have to wait until I hit X number of years for employment. That was just where I was. And then when I hit those benchmarks, I naturally had that same increase ability that everybody else would have had. Um, and yeah, I don't transitioning, and then I guess it's hard, right? Like when you leave, like I was so comfortable. I loved teaching. I really did. Until, you know, I didn't. And then it was like I have to get out. And like with Mauser, I wasn't ever unhappy. I think that that's kind of one of those things. Everybody, there's like this hurry up and leave culture of like we have to switch jobs and switch jobs and switch jobs. And it's for me, and this isn't true for everybody. This is true for me. It's about finding a balance of I know that maybe I'm not going to stay in one spot until I retire. I got a long work life ahead of me. Like there's tons of years. I don't know that I'll retire through children's. At the time, I didn't know that I would retire through Mauser, but for me, it was just really important finding companies and cultures that matched my own values, where it wasn't oh, we value family, but then as soon as a working mom, I'm having to either work remotely or pop out for a couple of hours to go to a meeting at the school or, whatever that looks like. I'm being penalized or having to dip into PTO. Um, like that was one of the questions I asked because I do think it's important that when you're interviewing, they're not just interviewing you, you are also very much interviewing them. And I went with very, very pointed questions, and they all centered around the things that were also important to me at home. So, like that time off, what does that look like? Is there the ability to be remote if there are situational things that arise? Like in DFW, I don't know how many Texas people, Brandy, I see you're a Texas gal, so when it ices here, the world shuts down. I don't know how to drive in it. I don't know what I don't want it. I don't, no, thank you. And so, like in interviewing, it was like, okay, well, is the expectation to come in if the roads are like this? Because, in schools, if the school shuts down, you don't go in either. And I had a couple interviews where they were like, well, yeah, we would expect you to come in, but possibly like with the delay and like it was easy for me then to be like, well, this isn't going to be a good fit because my kids are going to be out of school. I don't know how to drive on it, and I surely am not going to like ski and or snowshoe to where no, like that's not going to be a thing. um and so that's the other thing I think that's important, and I didn't realize how important until kind of recently, is that like you have to find time to invest in yourself and like your own learning. So when I transitioned to Mauser, and that was like my first role out of the classroom, I kind of did it all. I created content, I assigned it out, I was in charge of all of our IS compliance training. So, like all of the system security stuff. And it was a global company with some pretty strict regulations because of the materials that we ship. Um, and I was wearing way too many hats. But I finally told my VP, I was like, hey, I'm cool to do all of this, but I need you to send me to this conference. I need you to let me take these classes that we're gonna have to pay for on Udemy. And then I need you to also give me a week to work with another like department and partner with them so I can see how they're doing this, and this in the system. And like really being okay to advocate for yourself. Like, yes, when you transition out, it almost feels like you have to sit down and do all of the grunt work that they give you because there is this weird feeling of like, oh, I'm grateful for the opportunity, which don't get me wrong. I was very grateful for the opportunity and for all the things that I learned there. But once I was like, hey, I need these things, then I was able to continue to grow and continue to learn. And then, I went and I got my Cornerstone. I don't know how many LMSs, there's so many out there, but like Cornerstone's pretty dominant in the market right now. Um, I told my VP, I was like, hey, you're gonna have to pay for me to take this cert because for me to be successful, I need to be certified in this and this. And there was some back and forth because they didn't see the value. And I will say that like um Cornerstone, it's more private sector LMS. So I think in public ed where it's more Blackboard, Canvas, that area. But they function very similarly. Cornerstone is just kind of like an all-in-one. It does HR, it does the learning side, it can do skills and performance. But like learning about that And like jumping into that and getting a deeper understanding of the system and being certified, I really think is what enabled me to be able to pivot again. So I would say too, like once you're once you're in a role and you're like, oh, I like this, being able to say, okay, now 10 years from now, what's the market doing? And is this role going to be obsolete? And if it's going to be obsolete, how do I make myself so like how do I upskill myself in what I'm doing so that I am not obsolete? And that was the scary thing that I was like trying to figure out. And it started because Articulate rolled out their AI and they're like, you can create a course in 10 minutes. And I was like, oh Lord, no. And because then all of a sudden I have these VPs who are like, oh, why do we need a designer? We can just put it in there. And I was like, okay, all right, put your course in there, see what you get. Right. Like, I mean, there is some of that you guys have to be able to like push back a little bit and say, well, you need a human touch. Like you need a person to look at this. And who better than somebody who has been in education, who understands how people learn, how to scaffold materials, how to make things engaging, how to, you know, make sure that it's meeting disability standards and things like that, so that all learners can do, and have equitable access. So, um, yeah, no, AI is coming, and people are like, it's gonna take us all out. It's not. I'm just I'm a firm believer, like we can work with it. And that is another part of like kind of my story is that like I'm very big on the I will work with the AI, but like it can't do at this point, even generative is not better than what I can give you. And I do think it's important to be able to say that to people and to really stand by it. Like not everybody likes that kind of moxie, but I feel like if you are at the right spot and you're at the right company, you're like, I can do it better, they'll appreciate it and they'll scoop you up.
Very true. All right. The one thing I wanted to add on here before we go to breakout rooms was about those salary negotiations. I put a book in the chat that I read a while ago. Um, and summarize it, I think it were Harvard researchers were looking at entry-level jobs, men and women just starting out. Very often the women were just taking what was offered to them and not asking for more and then going back and forth a few times, but it's much more often that men would. And that difference in what men and women were asking for accounted for that gap. The one of the biggest gender equity gaps that you see is because the women didn't start by asking for more. They got that base salary, and then those incremental salaries, they'll never catch up to the men who asked for a little more at that same company. The only way they can make headway is to change companies. But even then, if they're asking what was your previous salary, I guess unless you lie and say, "Oh, I made this much." I don't know, but that accounts for a huge discrepancy between what men and women are paid. Um, and the worst that can happen is they say no. And I mean, really, they're not going to say, "Well, that's it. We don't want you anymore." They're they're not going to do that. They're going to say, if it's a no, they'll say, "I am so sorry, but this was a firm figure." And then you can say from there whether or not you'll take it. You can still say no, you can still accept it. The worst is that you take the minimum and they would have given you more, you know. All right. Let's take a minute here for breakout rooms. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Before we get to our whole group Q&A, I want to make sure that you know when the next session is that we're going to meet. We're going to meet June 2nd, 7 to 8 p.m. Um, and I'll grab that link and put it in the chat. Is there anything else I want to share? Oh, I'm going to share in the chat also a presentation. I I think I shared this last time, but in case you haven't got it, it's AI powered brain dumps. Something you can use in your course design if you build courses. Okay, let's open it up for whole group Q&A, and I will work on grabbing that registration link. What questions are out there?
So I just wanted to ask really quickly, when it comes to building a portfolio, so right now I'm a literacy specialist in an inner city school in New York, and so I'm really good at that, right? But there's a lot of other sort of avenues I'm understanding from instructional design. So when building the portfolio, how diverse would you recommend getting?
Holly or Megan?
Yeah. I would say that the portfolio needs to be multimodal. So videos, presentations, content that you've designed or projects that you've worked on, like showing your project management skills, like I said, documents, presentations, videos, to just showcase a different, like all around skills. And if you don't have those, I'm not going to say like you need to go purchase like, software to do those things, but also to making sure that the things that you're highlighting, they're probably proprietary, just taking away the identification of what those might be. Because I've seen some people use, their school stuff and they got in trouble because it was meant to say in the school. So one of my things is it's proprietary. I mean, dealing with the proprietary stuff, but making sure that you're making it's not just text based, it's showcasing all your skills that you have. And as a literacy teacher, obviously you have a lot of skills that transition well into instructional design.
Megan,
Thank you.
what are your
You're welcome.
thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think that the more diversity that you can show, I mean, okay, I think if you're trying to put a number on it, because I am a very literal person. I'm like, okay, how many pieces do I need to have in my portfolio? I think if you have like between 5 and 8 really strong showings of different ways that you've done things, like so here's a one pager that I did that was just like FAQs. Here's the outline that I did for an in-person event. And here, if you have it recorded, here's a video of how I did it. Here's, I'm not gonna lie, I put a web quest in mine, former teachers, you guys get me, right? Like I was like this, I designed this and it was very interactive. So people because they want to know that you can build out different things. The hot button word right now is gamification. Can you gamify it? Can you make micro learning, and then also can you game it? Like at least right now for us, that's one of the things. And so being able to like speak to that and say, hey, yeah, it's not, maybe it's not exactly what you're looking for, but it's kind of similar, and this is how it could be tweaked to meet the needs that you guys have. But I am a literal person. I'm like, what is the number? How many things do you want to see?
That's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I write all the curriculum for my department, but it's very different. So I appreciate your guys' feedback.
What other questions out there? We have about a little more than 5 minutes left.
Um, I've got a question about AI. So we've been talking a lot about how, incorporating AI into, um, whatever kind of work you're doing. Um, what kinds of courses or research do you do to like learn how to understand and use AI?
I can say that I've done minimal courses. I did something on LinkedIn, but I'm a tinkerer. I learn by doing. I learn by having a problem I'm trying to solve and then using a tool to try to solve it. Um, I would, it would be so much easier if I could just take a course. And I never read instruction manuals, and they're there. And I would get frustrated at myself because what, you just read the manual. My ex-husband would just read it. I'm like, that doesn't work for me, unfortunately. I need that's what works for me. Um, that's all I'll say about that. it's worked pretty well for me to go that route where I have a task or I have a problem I need to solve. And then, and also kind of what I do is I ask my colleagues, what are you doing? How are you using this? I have this problem. What would you do? That's worked pretty well for me. Holly or Megan?
Yeah, I would say there's so many out there that you have to learn. I definitely tinker as well, and I didn't take any formal classes. I'm self-taught, is what people say. But I think it's important that you understand the nuances of the big ones and what it can and can't do, and making sure you're reviewing things. Um, I think that what was I gonna say? It's just AI is so it's so vast now. Like it just exploded. So maybe learning, taking a class on generative AI prompting is important now. Like that's a critical thinking skill that that students have to know is how to prompt. Just like when some of us were growing up, we had to know how to identify the difference between a primary and a secondary source. Um, and I would also type in the AI, how do I learn AI? Like, what's the
Oh
best
yeah.
approach? Like, give me some courses, some free things, because there's tons of free stuff out there. But if you're focused on specific things, like I said, like prompting, then go that route because I feel like there's going to be jobs, or there already are jobs called like prompt engineers or like AI engineers and things like that.
I ask AI stuff like after I've had a conversation with it, um, how should I have asked my question from the beginning to get this response, you know, to
Yeah.
help me understand. That's been pretty cool. That what's it called? There's a word for it where you like recursive maybe, where
Yeah.
you have conversation and you're like take away from this conversation and then I kind of use that information to build out a master prompt that I feed the chat GPT to let them know, please continue to answer like this because you don't want to start fresh every time. Megan says if you have Microsoft, they have a ton of free resources around Copilot and give a pretty solid info to start. That's really great. Also, oh God, what's it called? I'm not gonna remember. Chat prompt. What's it called? I'll figure it out and I'll put it in the resources. There was one that our division shared for getting started with AI that I thought was pretty useful. It was pretty short videos. Yeah. But so much of it was just getting used to what kinds of responses Chat GPT or other generative AI would give me with prompts. If the more specific I was, the better it got. And it also is increased in its ability to do good work.
And I will say this, when it comes to AI, many companies and schools too, like you'll see it um like as tech teams and stuff start rolling that out, they stick with Microsoft or with some of these others that have a closed loop. So like Copilot, they call it the grid, and everything feeds into there, but it's not feeding everything else the way like Chat GPT or Gemini or things like that do. Like, so it stays fairly closed loop. So understanding just kind of what the big ones are and how they function, and then how you can leverage that to be more productive, because truly with a business, it's the bottom line, right? Like, is this saving the company money because I'm able to be more efficient? Like, that's a big piece that people like to see, and being able to speak relatively knowledgeably about that. Like, I leverage the AI tool, the AI creation tool in Copilot or in Articulate to cut course design down by 40%, giving me a turnaround time of, like, my SLA drops from 4 weeks, that lead time from 4 weeks to 2 weeks from, request to implementation. Being able to say some of that because you're like, okay, I understand what it does. I understand how it impacts how I do my job. And now I can say that to you as the business so that you understand that I can use it and leverage it and still be, a positive contributor to the culture and stuff.
And I found it's learn prompting. That was what we got a division-wide license for ChatGPT, but in order to be added to that license, we were required to go through one of these modules or courses, and they were pretty fast, and I thought they were good, especially if you are just want the very basics. I thought it was great. And that brings us to 8 o'clock. So I want to say thank you to Megan and Holly for sharing your time and expertise and your resources and all your advice in this crazy, rapidly changing technological landscape that we're all inside and trying to figure out what our value is. We do have value. We just need to articulate it differently than we did in the past. As a reminder, we are not meeting in May. I'm going on vacation with friends, Sans kids, and I'm very excited about it. So looking forward to that. And I hope to see you all back here June 2nd, and we'll do it all again. Thank you for being here, everybody. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Megan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.